I can't believe that for the first time since starting 7 out of 10, I'm actually on track to deliver my Game of the Year video before New Year's Eve. That's right, it's December 2019, and I'm here today to give you my list of the best games I played this year. But seeing as though it is December 2019, it's time for me to lick all of the dirt off my hands, as is customary in this December 2019. Excuse me for a second. Now that my belly is full of delicious bacterium, it's time for me to lie down under a very hot space heater to cultivate it into a delicious intestinal syrup. Don't worry, the last thing I'll forget to do is make this video for an entire 12 months. That would be a ridiculous thing to do. Fine, I'll do the video. Hey you! Now you might be thinking, Liam, what the hell is going on? You disappear for the majority of the year to make videos for a PlayStation focused channel, and now you're back to deliver a Game of the Year list 12 months too late. Do you think this is acceptable? What kind of 2-bit operation are you trying to run here, Buster? Well, first of all, let me just say that yes, while I have been creating content for Push Square every week since January, I've decided to come back and make a video I won't be paid to create as a treat for myself. Secondly, although we may already be at the end of 2020, I see no reason why I can't press my arse cheeks against your computer screen to toot out a list of things I liked from last year. What are you? Some kind of time policeman? Between huge AAA releases that took a surprising amount of creative risks and the usual wheelbarrow full of lovely indie titles, 2019 was objectively a pretty great year for games. Now, here's what might make this video a little more interesting. Because I live my life with the same chaotic energy as a dog trapped in a neighbour's shed, desperately barking and lapping up paint in order to stay alive, I didn't even start writing this video until September 2020. Now sure, I had a list of games I wanted to talk about, but I last looked at that in December of last year, and it turns out that leaving your thoughts and opinions about the best games you played during an entire year to stew for an additional 12 months turns a lot of those hot takes you had about titles that were fresh in your memory at the time into mere tepid points of view. So this list has changed dramatically, for the simple reason that time makes fools of us all. Some memories have faded, while others seem much sweeter. It's been an interesting process unpacking these titles and observing them from afar. The result is probably the most subjective and earnest list I've ever written, as it should be. Because it's fucking December 2020, why am I even doing this? This intro is way too long for a video that is already 12 months too late. Here is my list of the best games I played in 2019. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 was the first Resident Evil game I ever played. At the far too young age of 8 years old, Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield's attempt to escape the zombie-infested Raccoon City was simultaneously terrifying and transformative. It instilled within me a lifelong infatuation for survival horror as a genre, and remains, to this day, one of my all-time favourite games. In fact, I loved Resident Evil 2 so much that my friend and I invented a game called Escape the Lab that we'd play in the school playground during the week. We'd gather kids whose parents were responsible and didn't let them play 18 rated games at sleepovers over the weekend, and therefore had no clue what we were on about, before tasking them with escaping the facility while other kids played infected monsters that tried to hunt them down. To this day, I can still recite the pre-recorded alert message that plays over the tannoy at the end of the game because of how much we played this schoolyard interpretation of Resi 2's final sequence. Warning, warning, the self-destruct sequence has been activated. All employees, please proceed to the emergency car at the bottom platform. Can you imagine two kids standing perfectly still at the side of a school playground just shouting that at lunchtime? How did I have more friends back then than I do now? So it's fair to say that when Capcom announced that Resident Evil 2 would finally be receiving a full-blown remake in August 2015, I was cautious. You see, all the way back in 2002, when Capcom remade the original Resident Evil, a lot of fans, me included, expected the company to jump straight into developing a remake of the sequel to capitalise on RE Remake's immediate success. Obviously this never materialised, but it's worth noting that fan opinion of the Resident Evil franchise was vastly different in 2002 than it was in 2015. In 2002, we had RE Remake, Outbreak, and the upcoming Resident Evil 4. Good games. In 2015, we had Resident Evil Revelations 2 and Operation Raccoon City. The thought of a remake then felt like a double-edged sword. There was as much chance it would resemble a cooperative Call of Duty title than a faithful recreation of the beloved original game. But after Resident Evil 7 descended from the heavens like Jesus cosplaying as Leatherface, I became far more optimistic about the upcoming remake, and as it turns out, I had every right to be. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a stunning recreation slash reimagining of the PlayStation 1 classic that exceeded my expectations in every regard. Combining the over-the-shoulder viewpoint from Resident Evil 4 with the looping level design and limited inventory capacity of the original trilogy, Resident Evil 2 Remake is a love letter to not just the original PlayStation 1 release, but the entire series as a whole. Exploring the blood-soaked hallways of the Raccoon City Police Department feels every bit as terrifying as it did back in 1998. The RE engine recreating the art museum turned police station with a frightening degree of realism. Combat feels weighty but tense, the camera pulled in a bit too close to the player's shoulder to capture that sense of claustrophobia that was prolific in the original game. Then there's the zombies. Oh, the zombies. Never before has a flesh-eating creature of the night been depicted so perfectly. Zombies in RE2 aren't just enemies. They're a constant presence throughout the game, a genuine threat, and far from the bullet fodder they're so often represented as. They carry with them a sense of weight, one that's felt as they lurch towards you and attempt to have a little snack on your face. Even on normal difficulty, attempting to kill every zombie in a single location is an ill-advised and indeed foolish task. You simply don't have enough bullets to put them down. These zombies are already dead. How are a few more bullets going to correct that? It's such a simple change, making the zombies more difficult to kill, but it completely transforms the feel of the entire game. It helps that they're absolutely disgusting, their rotten limbs schlucking off after a few carefully placed bullets, like they're a slow-cooked chicken, and their arms are chicken legs, and am I hungry? Where am I going with this metaphor? They are resilient, relentless, raging bastards, and the best enemy in the entire game, Mr. X included. He's fine, I like his hat, his flesh doesn't remind me of chicken, he's not my number one. Does he turn me on? He can make me whole again. A stunning remake, but best of all, it's just a great game in its own right. It's a shame that when they tried to do it again a year later, they didn't quite pull it off. Wait, am I pretending to be doing this in 2019? I can't remember. Let me check the script. I'm not. Cool, okay, well, moving on. Katana Zero. The first thing that struck me about Katana Zero was its impeccable combat. I don't use that word lightly, but it's true. The combat in Katana Zero is impeccable. As a hired goon fires his pistol at my kimono-wearing swordsman, I grind time down to a crawl. With one flick of my blade, the bullet ricochets back towards the sender, exploding their skull in a spray of blood and bone. As a second guard rushes into the room, I perform an evasive roll, pull a machete out of the floor, and lodge it directly into his chest. A third guard gets the jump on me and cuts me down in a spray of machine gun fire. But it doesn't matter. A second later, time has reset, and I'm back once again. This time around, I'll be the one who gets him first. God, I love Katana Zero. It seemingly came from nowhere but wriggled its way into my brain so deeply that I find myself thinking about it more often than you'd expect. Forget the combat. The combat rules, we've already talked about that. It's the narrative that sticks with you. The narrative that contextualizes the combat so seamlessly. A story of a soldier addicted to a drug that leaves him off sync with time and reality itself. His only fix given to him by his therapist, who tasks him with killing criminals within a sci-fi dystopia. There are many colourful characters to slaughter along the way, twists and turns to uncover as you slip further and further down into a dilated perception of time, all the while a thumping synthwave soundtrack plays in your ears, carrying you forward, keeping you engaged. Then there's the girl, the kid who lives in the apartment next door, the one that catches you off guard within the first few hours of what has been, up to that point, a rollercoaster of destruction and viscera. There's a surprising amount of narrative depth here, you see. A wider world that's discussed but never shown, spare fleeting glimpses in between the slaughter. There's a gentle heart, beating just below the surface. It's those pulses that stick with you once the credits roll. What can I say? I love Katana Zero. Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. It feels really weird to talk about Crash Team Racing in 2020 because it's not the same game I fell in love with over the summer in 2019. If you were to go out and buy the game now, you'd have a very different experience, I think, to the one I had upon its original release, and even to the one I had during the height of all of its post-release content. It feels a little bit like trying to introduce your new partner to your mum, but when you met your new partner, they were amazing and lovely, but by the time you bring them round for dinner, they're a heroin addict and they just keep trying to steal your mum's spoons. Originally released on the PlayStation 1 all the way back in 1999, Crash Team Racing achieved the impossible. It successfully created a kart racing experience capable of not only matching Nintendo's flagship genre-defining series Mario Kart, but arguably surpassing it. It introduced staple elements of the genre, such as jump boosting and a more in-depth power sliding mechanic that saw careful button presses rewarded with much-needed speed boosts. CTR was a masterclass that brought accessible multiplayer kart racing to Sony's hugely popular console. But while Mario Kart continued to innovate and improve in the years that followed, CTR stagnated under the stewardship of new owners Vivendi Universal. CTR's sequels were average playable affairs that failed to capture the magic of Naughty Dog's original title. And yet, if 2019's wonderful remaster proved anything, it's that the original formula is still a winner 20 years after its original debut. Skylanders developers Beenox have faithfully recreated Crash Team Racing from the ground up, maintaining the original's gameplay while completely refreshing its dated visuals for the modern era. Courses look stunning, each one spruced up for current generation hardware without ever losing what made them special in the first place. Characters receive a similar treatment, although no amount of additional polygons or realistic fur effects can distract you from how grotesquely 90s the expanded Crash Bandicoot cast appear in 2020. While the characters included in Mario Kart are all timeless family favourites, household names even your wee mam would recognise in a dark alley, the majority of CTR's races look like they would actually hang out in a dark alley and would stab your mum repeatedly for 10p, which they'd use to buy animal ketamine. But you're not here to play as Small Norm, who is a real character in the game. You're here for the excellent driving mechanics that haven't aged a day. Scooting around the game's various tracks is tight, responsive, and challenging, requiring more skill than its goofy exterior would initially imply. Drifting is pulled off by pressing one shoulder button to initiate a slide before pressing the opposite shoulder button in time to an expanding bar to successfully receive a boost. Unlike in Mario Kart, where drift boosts are awarded for wiggling the analog stick, CTR's slightly more advanced mechanics make for a more rewarding experience. In fact, the whole game just feels more reckless than Mario Kart, jankier, messier, but in a good way, in a way that makes pulling off a ridiculous drift jump into first place at the last second more exhilarating than it has any right to be, combined with a single-player story mode that still slaps, a timeless split-screen multiplayer suite that includes both classic races and a great battle mode, a functional online service, and every track from the game's PS2 sequel Crash Nitro Kart, and the launch version of Nitro-Fueled felt like a dense kart racing feast for ravenous millennials horny for orange fur. Why did I write that? The post-launch seasons ruined things, admittedly. Despite insisting the game contained no microtransactions before launch, Nitro-Fueled soon became stuffed with microtransactions, timed characters, a store that refreshed every 12 hours or so like the one in Fortnite. You know, bad stuff. Bad stuff that should never have been included within a remake of a game that was originally released in the 90s. Do you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to play as Spyro the Dragon. You know what I had to do in order to do that? Complete an arbitrary battle pass that involved a ridiculous amount of grinding. You know what I would have done to play as Spyro? Paid a $5 just for a DLC pack. But no. Apparently that's ridiculous. Fuck me, I guess. But despite all this, CTR Nitro-Fueled successfully remastered an all-time classic and filled it with a bunch of extras that made it as much of a genuine Mario Kart competitor in 2019 as it was in 1999. Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled is still a great game. It's messier in 2020, but I still love it. Apart from all the seasonal stuff, that was wank. Sayonara Wild Hearts. If there's one thing I love more than traditional rhythm games, it's interactive experiences that seamlessly blend music, narrative, and gameplay together to elevate every individual element to new heights. No game, in my opinion, does this better than Sayonara Wild Hearts. Effectively a playable Churches album, Sayonara Wild Hearts is a beautiful, memorable, and strangely affecting experience that has stuck with me in a way few games manage. Its narrative is obtuse, aiming to more so nail a specific tone rather than tell a traditional story, but for what it's worth, you play as a young, heartbroken woman who finds herself transported through several seemingly disparate, surreal vignettes to collect hearts, I think. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that tone, the feelings it evokes in the player through gameplay, visuals, and sound. It's a teenager's interpretation of overcoming heartbreak, and although that sounds awful, the game really nails that very raw, relatable sensation. It's all melodramatic fights, choreographed like dances that take place on the back of motorbikes while speeding through colourful environments and scored with spirited pop music. It's fucking wonderful. The gameplay is simplistic. It's more of an endless runner than a conventional platformer, with each level timed perfectly to a track by composer Daniel Olsen and singer Linnea Olsen. I'm so sorry if I've mispronounced your name. It's also very short and not hugely challenging, but I wouldn't change a single thing about it. It oozes personality, evokes strong emotions of a love long lost, and is the playable pop album of my dreams. I absolutely love it. Sayonara, Wild Hearts. Pokemon Shield. Looking back at every entry within Pokemon's 7 generations worth of games, it does feel like the most recent two, 2019's Pokemon Sword and Shield, will be the ones most quickly launched into the dustbin of apathy by the community at large. And I think that's a genuine shame, because they're probably my favourite. It's a conflicting feeling, to be honest. On the one hand, I don't agree with the weeping, nappy-wearing men that took to the internet in their hundreds in order to bully a company for not adding their favourite made-up monster into a video game made for children, but there are some criticisms levied towards Sword and Shield that I think are justified. For starters, its general presentation is pretty shit. Textures are blown out and warped, large open spaces suffer frame rate drops, and the overall aesthetic feels a bit tired and old. It's understandable to an extent. This is a company that has made nothing but handheld games for the best part of 2 decades, and porting over an old game engine to run on a home console can't be easy, but it doesn't change the fact that it feels a little cheaply tacked together, like a PS2 era Digimon title. But reservations about the presentation aside, there's just so much to love about Sword and Shield. The Galar region, the brand new location where the game takes place, is a surprisingly faithful recreation of the United Kingdom, albeit one interpreted through the lens of a Japanese development team. Everything is exaggerated in a fun, almost childlike way. The city of Motorstoke, a clear analogue of real-life Manchester, is an industrial city filled with huge cogs and other pieces of machinery. Pokemon battles are fought in enormous football stadiums. One city just has a building with a big crown on it. Subtle. As a Brit, it felt wonderful to just explore this world and absorb all of its recognisable weirdness. To hear anime characters say the word mate, to wander between quaint countryside cottages where rolling sheep Pokemon graze sleepily on their front lawns, to spend time trying to work out which character designer at Game Freak decided Leon's costume should combine a football outfit, a regal cape covered in sponsorship logos, and a snapback cap, to cook leftover noodle curry because, sure, I guess we love curry, but no one at Game Freak decided to do any more research beyond that simple statement. Combine all this silliness with the same addictive RPG elements that have been arguably perfected over the past 20 years, a bunch of delightful new Pokemon to discover and train, a fun new mechanic where your Pokemon can become stadium-filling monstrosities in the wild area, the series' first pseudo-open world that, despite complaints, I actually find to be quite endearing, and honestly, you have an absolutely stellar release that I became hooked on over Christmas 2019. It's easy, I think, to dunk on Pokemon at this point. The series is so big that Game Freak could feasibly get away with releasing an abomination of a video game and it would still generate $1 billion. But there's something magic about these games that has persisted throughout the years. They make me feel 10 years old, all over again, embarking on a grand adventure across an unknown world. And when that world is so closely modelled on the country that I call home, well, that just makes it feel even more special. You could say that it's the toast to my curry. No one who made this game has ever eaten Indian food. Hypnospace Outlaw. What could I possibly say about Hypnospace Outlaw that I haven't already said 100 times before in videos on this very channel, on Twitter, or to the staff of my local fish and chip shop while I'm waiting for my daily bread bun and a plastic cup of pea wets? Hypnospace Outlaw is one of my favourite games of the past decade, never mind 2019. No game has left me feeling this obsessed before, this frantically fanboyish. Its depiction of a surreal alternate reality 90s era internet that is accessed while you sleep via a radioactive headband is startlingly grounded in a very real sense of nostalgia. It tells a human tale about the internet, as it was at the turn of the millennium, where disparate communities forged around shared hobbies and interests interact with each other in very basic ways. Despite key characters being conveyed through little more than personalised web pages that contain brief paragraphs of text and low-quality images, the game still manages to build a world more convincing than most AAA releases could only dream of achieving. Since its release in March 2019, I've found myself sitting with it longer, thinking about the disparate elements that make it so special. Like the soundtrack, conducted primarily by the game's creator Jay Tholen, the dozens of original tracks stuffed within Hypnospace's web pages help sell the fiction as effectively as the superb writing. Not only are there fuzzy, Microsoft-esque Muzak tracks that sound distinctly 90s computing, but there are also entire genres created and brought to life within the fictional realm of Hypnospace. Fictional tracks composed by fictional people based on fictional brands that spawn fictional genres. It's astounding the amount of care, thought and love that has been poured into the soundtrack of this game alone. Last year, Jay Tholen was my most listened to artist, according to Last.fm. I transcribed the lyrics to one of these fictional songs for Genius.com. I really like this game. Then there's Hypnospace's overall aesthetic. Hazy, pixelated web pages that wobble into life, stuffed full of animated GIFs, word art, and colourful patterned backgrounds. Simply browsing Hypnospace is a joyous experience. This summer, that's 2020, I know the timeline of this video is a little confusing, Tholen and the rest of the team behind the game released Hypnospace Plus, a free expansion pack of sorts that expands the base game with more pages, side stories, and, of course, music. Not only that, but the game was also released on consoles, including the Switch, where it arguably feels just as much at home as it does on PC. I can't see myself stopping talking about this wonderful game anytime soon. It makes me happy, and it's a testament to the raw talent of the game's creators, developers, and contributors. Hypnospace Outlaw is undoubtedly, in my eyes, the best game released in 2019. I implore you to discover its magic for yourself. You will not regret it. Before we wrap up, let's have some honourable mentions. Parkitect is probably the closest we'll get to a true successor to Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, and it absolutely rules. Satisfactory is just Factorio, but in 3D, and it's as complex and as addictive as you'd expect it to be. I really need to play more of that. Tetris 99 was a fun experiment that absolutely destroyed my life. I hate that game. I played a lot of Destiny 2 and Fortnite during 2019, just because those games are like heroin to me. Fortnite especially. I went back to Fortnite mainly for Chapter 2, and I just got absolutely addicted to it towards the tail end of the year. Over Christmas, it's kind of all I played. Star Wars Fallen Order would have been on this list if I hadn't been playing Fortnite when it came out. I've played like 2 hours of Fallen Order. It should be my perfect game. I love Star Wars, I love single-player action adventures, but nope, Fortnite ruined my life. This is a PSA. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night would have been on this list if I hadn't taken 12 months to write this video and I needed to cut corners somewhere. So Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, fantastic. Probably should be on this list. Maybe that should be more than an honourable mention, but that's a good game. Not many people spoke about that past its release, but that's a really fun Castlevania sequel. It's good. It's good. I wanted to like Control more than I did. I felt really enamored by its world and its level design and even the story it was telling me, but playing it felt not that fun, especially on a base PS4. That game ran like shit on a base PS4. I will probably go back to it at some point, but I'm saying that and I have not played it since maybe September 2019. But Control, in theory, should have been my game of the year, just based on its world and how it looks, but no, it just didn't hook me as much as I wanted it to. So there we have it. That is my list of the best games I played in 2019. I have been intending to do this video since December 2019. It has been like an itch in the back of my brain throughout 2020. Who's watching this? No one asked for this, but I needed to make this video. I just needed to have it on the channel. It's just been trapped in here for 12 months. And I'm so happy that it's finally out. Hopefully. I still have to edit it. I still have to capture all the footage of the games. Thank you so much for watching. If you've watched right up to this point, it does mean a lot that you support me and my ridiculous work. If you can remember that far back, what was your favourite game from 2019? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to like this video and subscribe, feeding the algorithm helps the channel more than anything else. So please feel free to do that. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a lovely 2019. Maybe watching this was nice in 2020. Maybe remembering last year offered you some respite. I don't know. It's been fun taking a trip back to memory lane in that regard, but I'm just really happy this video's out. Well, it's not out yet, but it will be. By hook or by crook, this video's going on my fucking channel. Bye bye.